We're going to start off with the good tonight. So the New Orleans Saints beat the Panthers 47-10. I mean, with the new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, who was a former staff member of the 49ers, Broncos, and the Chiefs, and I believe Texas A&M as well. He was at during his college days. And obviously their head coach over there, Dennis Allen, put up a fantastic performance against a very, very bad Carolina Panther team, Adam. I mean, they are... part of me sort of is hesitant to give Saints too much of their flowers just yet, just because how bad this Panthers team were. But Derek Carr looked good, 13 for 23, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, 15 carries for Kamara as well, 83 yards and a touchdown. Tight ends getting both a couple of touchdowns, and Rashid Shaheed, and this defense came to play as well. Adam, how impressed were you with this New Orleans Saints outfit?
It is difficult to give them too much credit, maybe, is the way forward here, given who they played, as you said. But it looked very efficient. They looked, because they got 4 touchdowns, but, Derek Carr only had 200 passing yards, didn't he? So it wasn't like it was an insane amount of passing yards. So it felt like a very efficient offense. And that kind of feels very Kubiak, kind of like how his dad was for the Broncos when he was head coach there. It was very much like the defense was good, but it was a very efficient offense with a strong run game. And having them guys there like Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas was there as well. And you just sort of think, it kind of felt a little bit similar, and you feel like he's kind of taken maybe that from his dad and the way that he used to run a team as well. But they did very well. I thought that Kamara was great. I think that Kamara is going to have a good season this year. He's going to be the main sort of like running back, and there's not really much competition there. Rashid Shaheed looked really good in the long passing game, which we all know Derek Carr's got an arm that can do that, so that's fine. A little bit surprising that Olave didn't get involved much. That was the one thing that was a bit odd. I think he had like 3 receptions, if that. So that was slightly strange that he didn't get involved as much. But they didn't really need to, once they got to the second half, they didn't really need to be passing the ball much. And I think that was kind of maybe where them stats have kind of skewed a little bit from a normal game. But I think we all thought that they weren't going to be anything that impressive offensively, and that they were just going to be a solid defensive team and do well. But they looked pretty good. I mean, no matter who you're playing, you still got to put 47 points up on them. So I mean, you got to be decent just to be able to do that. So I think they've done pretty well, and I think they've probably done a bit better than what we thought in week 1.
Yeah, Larve with two targets, 2 receptions, 11 yards, which, for them people who drafted him in their second round of their fantasy team, a little bit of a lump in their throat. It's incredibly convenient, James, given your team, who you support, because moving on, and we'll stick onto the offense. We'll obviously talk about defense in a moment, but Derek Carr, an impressive showing from him. Like I said, 19 for 23, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. A quarterback that's had, a little bit of a rocky time since his sort of MVP style season when he was at the Raiders, but a quarterback that you know very well. Do you think he is the guy that can lead this team, this Saints team, to winning ways and maybe push to the playoffs and win this division? Because he's very Marmite. You're either very in or you're very out on Derek Carr, I feel like, amongst the NFL fandom in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's always got a bit more bad press than he actually deserves. Now, don't get me wrong, like, he's not really ever going to be a top 8 quarterback or something like that, but he's usually around the middle of the pack, and he is quite consistent. He doesn't make a huge amount of mistakes. Unfortunately for him, usually when the mistakes do occur, they are quite costly. But that's just the nature of the game. There are better quarterbacks out there that have similar issues. He's not the most mobile, which doesn't play well in the current game, I don't feel. But he's that consistent middle of the pack guy. He will give you a chance every game. He just needs to get some more consistent rhythm with his receivers. And I think actually at the moment, he's got a good amount of options. You know, we saw him linking up with Foster Moreau a couple of times, again, the X-rated tight end. And he does like to play to his tight ends a little bit more than most. So perhaps that's a connection to look out for going forward. I was torn when he moved from the Raiders. I sort of thought it was time to move on because I felt like the relationship had gone a bit sideways. But at the same time, it hasn't really got any better since he's left. So you're sort of looking, thinking, should we have just stuck better the devil you know kind of thing? But I think he can move this Saints team forward. This is a team that, again, we thought are going to be pretty reliant on the defense and that the offense might tick them along. But Kamara looks impressive. He had that burst that we're used to seeing. And obviously they missed him last year when he missed that run of games at the start of the season. And so if they can get a little bit more consistency from their receivers, build those relationships with your main guys like Olave, and maybe look to introduce something else in the backfield. Kamara, whilst excellent, isn't going to be able to do it all year. So I think they've got good options. It'll be interesting to see what they cook up. And you can only beat what's in front of you. You know, it's going to get more difficult. And I was looking at their schedule. Their games up until they next meet Carolina again are at Dallas, at home to the Eagles, at Atlanta, at Kansas City, home to the Bucs, home to Denver, at the Chargers. You know, that's a tough run. If they come out of their 4-4, I think, you know, a lot of Saints fans at the start of the season might snap your hand off. But based on this performance, they might be, you know, getting a little bit ahead of themselves. I would just say rein it in. Let's check yourself against a fairly impressive looking Dallas team next week and go from there. There's things to like. And I hope Derek Carr does well. I really do. But obviously maybe not too well.
No, you're right. When I looked at their matchups, they've got some real tough matchups up into week 12, which is their bye. And after that, it's a very winnable schedule for them. So if they can, like you said, if they go 4-4 in the next 8 games, that's a very impressive sort of line for them to go into the latter part of the season, but then goes into their bye. And then, like I said, after the bye, they've got some really good matchups after the bye. I think the Steelers included in that run up of winning games after the bye. Adam, the defense was something we sort of touched on in a couple of the shows. Is that they sort of get forgotten about. I mean, year on year, I feel that everyone does forget about them, but they are good. And they were the 8th best defense last season. They were 4th in rushing touchdowns allowed. They only allowed 10 rushing touchdowns last year. Back to their best. Back to sort of keeping up with the tempo that they had last year.
I think they were solid, weren't they? To be honest, they didn't really have to do a lot. I think that's the way you kind of got to look at it a little bit. I mean, they did everything that was right. You know, everything they needed to do, they did. But I wouldn't say they were up against a high-powered offense in the Panthers. So it wasn't exactly too difficult for them. But yeah, I think they'll be a solid competitive defense. They have been, haven't they, for many years? And it kind of feels a little bit like they're one of them teams that almost to a certain degree, they build the defense first and then worry about the offense later a little bit. And so I think that you're going to see that with this Saints team this year. They're going to be very solid. They're going to do well. I think they probably are a top 10 defense, to be honest. They're more than capable of sticking in that sort of like range. And they just, like I say, they just did everything right. And that's all you need to do when you're going up against an offense that's really limited at the moment.
Yeah, I do feel that I like Derek Carr. I like him, and I would like to see this team do well. And I think this division is way open. This division is way open. I know we've hyped the Falcons a lot on this podcast. The Bucs as well have had some good mentioning as well. I mean, the Panthers haven't. I think that's not just this podcast. I think it's many. And Saints has been a team that everyone's a little bit hot and cold on, not too sure what we're going to get. I don't think what we've got this in this game is what we're going to get consistency, is going to get on a consistent level. I think James is right with that consistency with Derek Carr, but we've said it once, we'll say it again on this podcast. You can win a lot of games with adequacy at the quarterback position. You can have an adequate team and go quite far in this NFL. So it wouldn't shock me if they do sort of sneak into the playoffs on that NFC side of the division. But let's just sort of wait and see on that, I suppose.